When a woman disrespects you, it's not an accident. It's a test, a bet. She bets you'll still be there, waiting, answering her calls, begging for her time. And most men lose that bet. Disrespect never crashes into your life in one dramatic moment. It creeps in quietly. First, it's the playful jab that doesn't feel so playful. Then it's the delayed reply that suddenly becomes routine. Soon, it's her brushing off your presence, treating your effort as if it were nothing. And before you realize it, you've been demoted from being the center of her world to being a background character in her life. You try to hold on. You rationalize her behavior. You convince yourself it's just stress, or bad timing, or something you can fix if you just love harder, give more, wait longer. But every time you excuse it, every time you stay silent when you should set a boundary, you prove her right. You prove that no matter how far she pushes, you'll never walk away. That is why she feels safe disrespecting you. That is why she bets against you. And if you've ever been in that place, you know the sting. You know what it feels like to give everything only to be met with coldness. You know what it feels like to stay awake, staring at your phone, hoping for her message, only to see her laughing online with someone else. You know the pain of pouring your attention, your energy, your loyalty into someone who treats it like spare change. It eats at you. You replay conversations in your head, hunting for answers. You wonder if you said the wrong thing, if you didn't give enough, if maybe you're just not enough. And that's the most dangerous trap of all, believing that her lack of respect means your lack of worth. But here's the truth that changes everything. Disrespect is not the end. It is the beginning. It is not the wall that blocks your path. It is the doorway that forces you to rise higher. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The disrespect you've endured isn't a death sentence. It's the stone in the road that demands you climb, not stumble. It's the fire that forges you into the man you were meant to be. Because here's the reality: her actions are not yours to control. You can't dictate her words, her choices, her respect. But you can command your response. And once you master your response, you master your destiny. That is the essence of Stoic strength. Not reacting with anger, not pleading for change, but standing so firm in your standards that disrespect is not tolerated, not explained, not even acknowledged. It's simply removed. And imagine what happens the moment you embody that. Imagine the power of silence replacing the noise. The power of absence replacing arguments. The power of walking away without a single word spoken. You don't scream. You don't demand an apology. You don't announce your worth. You simply enforce it. And the message becomes undeniable. You no longer have access to me. This is the transformation. You stop being the man who negotiates for scraps of respect from one woman, and you become the man who commands respect from everyone. You stop living for validation, and you start living from principle. You stop chasing approval, and you start building a life so solid that approval becomes irrelevant. That is why we are here. Because in this video, I'm going to give you 5 silent moves. 5 principles that don't require shouting, proving, or begging, but will shake the ground beneath any woman who thought she could cross you. They're not tricks. They're not games. They're rooted in psychology, discipline, and timeless Stoic wisdom. And when you live them, something extraordinary happens. You no longer need her recognition for them to work. The regret she feels is just a side effect. The real power belongs to you. So if you've ever felt invisible after giving your best, if you've ever felt dismissed after showing loyalty, if you've ever been told without words that your presence doesn't matter, listen carefully, because today is where the script flips. Today is where disrespect no longer defines you, it refines you. No more begging, no more convincing, no more explaining why you deserve respect. From this moment on, you will move in silence. And that silence will echo louder than every word you've ever spoken. 1. Cut off access. Disappear without a word. When a woman disrespects you, she's making a calculation. She doesn't do it blindly. She doesn't cross the line because she forgot who you are. She does it because she believes you'll stay. In her mind, you are too attached, too invested, too afraid of losing her. She bets that no matter what she says or does, you'll still answer her calls, still check her messages, still orbit her world. That belief is her safety net, and as long as you're there, she feels untouchable. But here's the truth. The safety net is an illusion, and the moment you cut it, the fall is brutal. The psychology is simple. Disrespect grows where boundaries are weak. If she thinks you won't enforce the line, she will cross it again and again. Not always maliciously, sometimes out of habit, sometimes out of testing, sometimes because she wants to know how much she can get away with. And when you let it slide once, you silently grant her permission to do it again. You're telling her without words, "I'll still be here, no matter what." That's why the most powerful response is not to argue, not to lecture, not to try and convince her why you deserve respect. The most powerful response is silence, withdrawal, disappearance, without a word. Imagine this. One day she sends a text, half joking, half insulting. In the past, you'd explain yourself, fight back, maybe even try harder to make her see your value. But this time, there's nothing. No reply, no reaction. Hours pass. Days pass, she checks her phone. Nothing. She calls. It rings out. She scrolls through her messages, confused, scanning the history like a detective. She starts asking herself, when did he change? When did he stop being there? When did he disappear? And that is when regret begins. Not because you yelled at her, not because you gave her a speech, but because you gave her nothing. The impact of silence is far heavier than the weight of words. A lecture she can argue with, an angry outburst she can dismiss as emotional. Even a dramatic exit still gives her the comfort of knowing she has your attention. But silence cannot be argued with. Silence cannot be dismissed. Silence forces her to face the truth. Access to you is gone. And here's the beauty. When you cut off access, you don't just shift the balance of power. You remove her from the equation entirely. You are no longer a man fighting to be respected by one woman. You are a man who commands respect everywhere. This is the Stoic principle in action. Epictetus taught that we control only two things: our thoughts and our actions. Not her words, not her choices, not her recognition. The moment you understand this, you stop trying to convince her. You stop trying to justify your worth. You stop negotiating with disrespect. Instead, you enforce the only standard that matters: your own. No warnings, no threats, just action. And here's what that action looks like. You don't announce your departure. You don't storm out of the room shouting, "You'll regret this." That only feeds her ego. That only shows she still has control over your emotions. No, you cut quietly. You delete her number. You mute or block her on every platform. You refuse to acknowledge her in group settings. You don't stalk her stories. You don't check her posts. You don't leave even a single breadcrumb she can follow back to you. Because every breadcrumb is a thread, and every thread she can pull on keeps you in her orbit. Cutting off access means removing yourself completely, externally and internally. Externally, she no longer has your time, your voice, your presence. Internally, she no longer has your mental space. Because if you cut her off in the real world, but still sit in your room replaying her face, checking her updates, wondering if she regrets it, you haven't cut her off at all. You've only freed her from your presence while still giving her free rent in your mind. That's why this move requires discipline. the discipline to resist the urge to check, the discipline to ignore the itch to see if she's noticed your absence, the discipline to redirect that energy into yourself, into the gym, your work, your craft, your growth. Because if you don't redirect, the silence collapses back into obsession. But when you do redirect, something incredible happens. By the time she fully realizes you've vanished, you're already miles ahead. You've built momentum she could never catch, even if she tried. And in that moment, regret becomes inevitable. Picture it. She expected you to beg. She expected you to fight. She expected you to hold on. Instead, she got nothing. Silence, absence, space she didn't prepare for. And while she scrambles to process, you've already become untouchable. This is not a mind game. It's not manipulation. It's not about trying to trick her into crawling back. It's a principle, a recalibration of the privilege she once had, the privilege of your presence. Disrespect has a cost, and the cost is losing you. That is why this move works, because you don't need to make her feel bad with words. You don't need to craft the perfect speech. The sudden absence of your attention carries a weight all its own. It's heavier than any insult, colder than any threat, and it cannot be ignored. But make no mistake, this only works if you execute it fully. Half measures don't count. Blocking her number but still peeking at her social media doesn't count. Unfollowing her, but keeping one secret channel of communication open doesn't count. Every thread you leave is an anchor that ties you back. To cut clean, you must vanish completely. And here's the hardest part. You will be tempted to check. You'll feel the urge to peek at her page, to see if she's asking about you, to wonder if she's regretting it yet. That urge is the test. That is where Stoic discipline comes in. The moment you send even the smallest signal, you weaken the impact of your silence. You give her oxygen again. You give her control. So instead of feeding that urge, you redirect it. You pour it into yourself. Into lifting heavier weights than you thought possible, into building the business you kept postponing, into sharpening the skills that elevate your future. You pour it into becoming the man who no longer even attracts that kind of disrespect. Because here's the ultimate truth. When you cut her off both externally and internally, you win twice. She loses you, and you gain yourself. And that is the essence of this first silent move. Disappear without a word. No warnings, no threats, just action. Not because you want to play games, but because you live by a principle. Respect is not negotiable, and disrespect ends access. When you embody that, you become unforgettable. Not to her, but to yourself. Because you've proven, finally and fully, that you are a man who enforces his worth, not with speeches, not with anger, but with silence. And silence, my friend, is louder than anything you could ever say. 2. Level up quietly. When a man walks away after being disrespected, most fall into the same trap. They sink into bitterness. They lock themselves in dark rooms, scrolling endlessly through her photos, stalking every status, every smile, every moment. They think that if they watch long enough, if they obsess hard enough, they'll find the answer. But the brutal truth is this. The more you look at her, the more you lose yourself. You think you've cut her off, but in reality, you've given her the greatest power of all, the power to live inside your head. That is not strength. That is not freedom. That is just another form of chains, invisible but tighter than steel. And the painful part is, she knows it. She knows that even if you walked away physically, your heart and your mind are still shackled to her hands. But a man of true power does not choose that path. He does not turn silence into a prison. He turns it into a launch pad. He understands that the strongest response to disrespect is not rage, not revenge, not waiting for someone to crawl back. The strongest response is transformation. You don't need to scream to be noticed. You don't need to boast to be recognized. You just need to become the mountain. And the mountain never begs for attention. It stands there, silent, immovable, unshakable. Storms may strike, clouds may cover it. But in the end, everyone is forced to look up. Picture this. Months later, after your silence, after leaving no trace, no messages, no calls, no crumbs for her to hold on to. In her mind, you're still the weak man, the desperate man, the man who will come crawling back. And then, one day, you walk into the room. But you are no longer that man. You enter with a body hardened by discipline, with eyes sharper, with a step that radiates confidence. You dress differently, speak differently, carry yourself with an aura that commands attention. And in that moment, she realizes her greatest mistake, underestimating you. You don't need to say a word. Your presence alone is the strike. The change in you speaks louder than anything you could ever tell her. And this is the eternal principle. Results speak. Always. A stronger body speaks. A disciplined mind speaks. A sharpened intellect speaks. A solid wallet. A commanding aura. All of it speaks. You don't need announcements. You don't need validation. Everything about you begins to project power without you opening your mouth. This transformation is not found in a photo dumped on social media, not in shallow displays of, "Look at me now." The man who levels up quietly doesn't chase recognition. He doesn't need her to see. He only needs himself to see. Every early morning when you rise before the world. Every rep at the gym heavier than last week. Every hour of reading instead of wasting time in empty conversations. Every dollar saved. Every skill refined. All of it compounds. Until one day, the change is undeniable. You walk back into the world, and every eye sees it. You are no longer the man you were. You are no longer the man who tolerated disrespect. You are living proof that disrespect did not destroy you. It launched you. And the best part? You don't need her to notice. You don't need her praise. You don't need her regret. Those are just side effects. What matters is that you've become the man no one will ever dare to disrespect again. That is why you must forge your body into armor, not just for strength, but to prove to yourself that you are in control. That is why you must build financial independence, not just for wealth, but so you'll never again endure disrespect because you fear losing support. That is why you must sharpen your intellect, so no one can manipulate you with emotion or lies. That is why you must elevate your presence, your eyes, your walk, your dress, because when a man knows his worth, the entire room feels it, even in silence. This is not a short game. This is not 30 days to make her jealous. This is permanent transformation. This is a new life, a new identity. A man who truly levels up doesn't wait for eyes on him. He doesn't beg for recognition. He doesn't need it. He simply lives. And ironically, that very indifference is what makes people notice. Because human beings always crave what they cannot control. When she finally sees you again, when she hears your name, when she hears others speak of your progress, regret will creep in. Not because she truly wants you back, but because she realizes she let go of a man who was rising. But don't forget, her regret is just the bonus. The real victory is that you built a version of yourself even your old self couldn't have imagined. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Stop arguing. Stop explaining. Stop waiting for someone to validate your worth. Let your results be your answer. Live in silence. Act in silence. Transform in silence. And then one day, when you step back into the light, the whole world will have no choice but to look up. The revenge is not in her regret. The revenge is in your existence. The man she once disrespected is gone, replaced by a man beyond her reach. And that is the loudest answer of all. You don't need to scream. You don't need to prove. You just need to become. And when you become, the world will listen. 3. Stop explaining. No more justifications. Every time you open your mouth to explain yourself, you are unknowingly negotiating your worth. You think you're clarifying, but you're really pleading. You think you're showing sincerity, but you're actually asking for permission to be who you are. And in that moment, your power doesn't grow. It drains away. Here's what most men don't see. When you try to explain your choices to someone who already disrespected you, you hand them the judge's gavel. You make them the authority over your life. You say, without words, approve me, validate me, tell me my path is acceptable. And that is the trap. Because once your worth depends on their approval, you've already lost. This is exactly how female psychology plays into the dynamic. When she disrespects you and you respond with explanations, why you walked away, why you stopped texting, why you changed, she doesn't hear your reasoning. She hears confirmation that you're still invested. She hears proof that you're still trying to make her see you. And the cruel twist is this: the more you explain, the more she knows she has power. Think about it. If you say, I just want you to understand why I pulled back, she realizes you still care what she thinks. If you write long paragraphs defending your boundaries, she sees that her opinion is still the center of your world. And if she can pull you back into justifying yourself, she wins, even while disrespecting you. But the man who knows his value does something radically different. He doesn't explain. He doesn't justify. He doesn't defend. He just moves, silent, unapologetic, certain, like a ship cutting through a storm without a single word to the wind. Picture that for a moment. Waves crashing, thunder roaring, the storm raging around him. Most men panic, shouting into the chaos, trying to bargain with the storm. But the Stoic man grips the wheel, stays his course, and says nothing. He doesn't need the storm to understand him. He only needs to move forward. That is the metaphor for your life. You are the captain. You are the course. The storm doesn't deserve an explanation. So when she comes back with the inevitable question, why have you changed? You don't pour out your heart. You don't break into essays. You don't beg her to see your side. You simply say, I've been focused on my own path. And you leave it at that. Short, calm, closed. No opening for debate. No room for manipulation. Just a man walking his way, without permission, without apology. Understand this truth. A man with direction doesn't need approval. A man with vision doesn't need permission. His path is his authority. His results are his answer. And ironically, the less he explains, the more respect he commands, even from the same people who once dismissed him. Because silence in this context is not weakness, it is strength. When you refuse to justify yourself, you are saying, I am no longer part of your frame. I am no longer bound by your opinion. I don't need you to understand, because I already understand myself. That kind of calm detachment is more powerful than any argument. It's untouchable. Now let's talk about where most men stumble. They believe that if they just explain clearly enough, she'll finally see the truth. They think that if they line up all the reasons, if they speak from the heart, if they show their pain, then she'll finally get it. But here's the cold reality. She doesn't need to get it. She needs to feel it. And feelings don't come from words. They come from action. Your distance speaks louder than explanations. Your silence weighs heavier than justifications. Your transformation screams louder than speeches. The moment you stop explaining and simply embody your standards, you force people to deal with reality instead of your arguments. And this isn't just about women. This applies everywhere. When a friend questions your new routine, you don't write an essay defending it. When family doubts your business decisions, You don't beg them to believe. When coworkers question why you're not wasting nights at bars, you don't explain yourself into exhaustion. You let your results speak. You let your actions demonstrate. Those who respect you will never need a defense. Those who don't respect you will never be convinced by one. This is the line where most men regain their power. They stop chasing understanding from the wrong people. They stop handing out free justifications to those who will twist it against them. They realize that their time, their energy, their words are too valuable to spend on convincing anyone. And here's the paradox. The less you explain, the more they lean in. The less you defend, the more they wonder. The less you justify, the more they respect. Because your silence signals certainty, and certainty is magnetic. So from now on, remember this. If she disrespects you and asks why you're distant, you don't explain. If she presses about why you don't call, you don't explain. If she wonders why you're no longer around, you don't explain. You simply say, "I'm focused on my path," and then you keep moving. That is what separates the man who begs for approval from the man who commands respect. The first is desperate to be understood. The second doesn't need to be understood. He simply lives his truth. And here's the ultimate key. Once you stop explaining, you free yourself. You free yourself from her opinion. You free yourself from their judgment. You free yourself from the endless, exhausting cycle of trying to make everyone see your value. You don't need them to see it. You only need to live it. When you reach that point, your silence becomes your weapon. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of defeat, but the silence of strength. The silence of a man who knows his worth is not up for debate. The silence of a man who no longer negotiates his standards. So stop explaining. Stop justifying. Stop handing away your power every time someone questions you. Move like the storm captain. Calm, steady, unapologetic. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. While they waste their breath, you move forward. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't respect explanations. It respects results. And a man with direction doesn't need permission. He doesn't need approval. He doesn't need validation. He only needs to walk his path. And when you embody that, your life speaks louder than anything you could ever say. 4. Redirect energy. Build a new circle. Most men think walking away from a disrespectful woman is the finish line. They cut ties, block her number, go silent, and they believe the battle is over. But here's the trap. You can walk away from her, yet still remain in the exact same environment that shaped you into the man who tolerated her in the first place. You leave her, but you don't leave her world. And if you stay in that world, you will always be pulled back. You can't expect to rise while surrounding yourself with mediocrity. You can't expect to demand respect while sitting in circles that normalize weakness. You can't expect to transform while standing in the same stagnant water. Because here's a principle you cannot escape. You are the average of the people around you. If your circle lives for gossip, distractions, weekend escapes, and empty conversations, then no matter how badly you want to grow, their gravity will drag you back down. That is why walking away from her is not the end. It is only the beginning. The real move is redirecting your energy. You stop pouring your focus into a toxic relationship, and you reinvest it into a new environment. You don't just leave her, you leave the entire ecosystem she belongs to. You step out of the culture of mediocrity and into a circle that breathes discipline, ambition, and growth. Picture a man who finally cuts her off but stays in the same routine. He still hangs around the same lazy friends. He still wastes nights in bars, complaining about life. He still surrounds himself with people who laugh at ambition, who roll their eyes when he talks about discipline. And what happens? Nothing changes. The woman is gone, but her shadow remains, because the environment never shifted. And eventually, That void pulls him back into another woman, just like her. Different face, same disrespect. Different name, same trap. Now picture the opposite. A man who cuts her off and then deliberately changes his circle. He seeks out mentors, friends, and communities who operate at a higher standard. Instead of spending nights drowning in mediocrity, he spends them building his body, his business, his mind. Instead of being the strongest man in a weak group, he humbles himself to become the weakest man in a strong group. He walks into rooms where his excuses sound pathetic, where his laziness is exposed, where growth is demanded, not requested. And what happens? He transforms, because the environment forces him to. That is the power of circles. They either pull you up or they drag you down. And the hard truth is this: most men never change their circles. They think leaving the woman is enough. But as long as they keep orbiting the same people, the same spaces, the same patterns, the same mediocrity, they will keep repeating the same story. You're not just leaving her, you're leaving her entire world. You're leaving the conversations she thrives in. You're leaving the culture she's comfortable in. You're leaving the cycle that made her think she could treat you the way she did. And when you step into a new circle, you step into a world she cannot even enter. That's when the regret becomes permanent, because she doesn't just see that she lost you. She sees that she lost access to an entire reality that is now far above her reach. So what does this look like in practice? It starts with an audit. Look at your relationships. Look at your environment. Who are the people in your life? Do they normalize mediocrity? Do they laugh at ambition? Do they drain your energy? Or do they sharpen you? If they pull you down, cut them off. Without apology, without hesitation. Once you remove the dead weight, you replace it with power. You deliberately seek out circles that force growth. Maybe it's a group at the gym where discipline is the standard. Maybe it's a mastermind where financial success is expected, not admired. Maybe it's a circle of men who wake up earlier, push harder, think bigger. These aren't people who let you coast. These are people who demand more of you, who push you past your comfort zone, who hold you accountable to your potential. And when you redirect your energy into this new world, everything shifts. Suddenly, you no longer spend your nights replaying what you should have said to her. You no longer obsess over whether she regrets losing you. You no longer care about the past at all. Your energy is locked forward into your body, your craft, your mission. And the more you invest in that, the faster her memory fades. Not because you're forcing it, but because the man you are becoming has no space left for it. Here's the impact. She will see it. She will hear about it. She will feel it. She will realize that you didn't just walk away from her. You walked away from the entire reality she still lives in. You built a new circle, a new culture, a new world where she has no relevance, no influence, no access. And that is devastating to her. Not because of what you said, but because of what you became. This is the Stoic truth. Energy must be redirected, not wasted. Silence isn't enough if it's empty. Walking away isn't enough if it's directionless. You must channel that silence, that absence, that energy into building something greater, into building a circle that pulls you higher, into building a life so elevated that disrespect cannot even exist in it. So stop pouring energy into broken places. Stop orbiting the same mediocrity. Stop waiting for respect to appear where it never will. Redirect everything into a circle that forces growth. Surround yourself with people who sharpen you. Build a reality so high, so strong, so disciplined, that the past no longer touches you. And when you live this way, something permanent happens. You no longer think about proving her wrong. You no longer wonder if she regrets it. You no longer carry her memory as a burden. Because your new life makes her opinion irrelevant. Her regret becomes eternal, not because you reminded her of your value, but because she sees it every time she looks at the life you built without her. This is the real victory. Not just leaving her, but leaving her world behind. Not just cutting her off, but cutting off the culture that allowed her disrespect. Not just moving on, but moving up into a reality she cannot even imagine, let alone enter. And when you reach that point, you'll finally understand. Respect isn't something you demand from others. Respect is something you build into your environment, your circle, your life. And once you build it, it can never be taken away. 5. Zero emotional recoil. The moment a woman disrespects you, the natural instinct for most men is to explode. The chest tightens, the jaw locks, the words sharpen like blades. Anger bursts out, pain seeps through, and emotions spill everywhere. They believe that if she sees the damage she caused, if she hears the fury in their voice, if she notices the ache in their tone, then finally, she'll understand. But here's the brutal truth. When you explode, you don't gain respect. You lose it, because your reaction proves one thing: you're still under her control. Every spike of anger, every bitter word, every visible scar only tells her that she still owns a piece of you, that her disrespect still has power over your inner state. And if she can rattle you, she still rules you. That is why the most devastating move is not an outburst. It's silence wrapped in composure. It's calm when she expects chaos. It's stillness when she wants the storm. This is not about pretending not to care. This is not about burying feelings under a fake smile. This is about true mastery, the ability to feel the sting but refuse to hand it power. The ability to separate what's inside from what's outside. The ability to live the wisdom of the Stoics. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Think of it like this. People can throw stones at you all day long, but if you keep walking, unmoved, those stones mean nothing. They may scratch the ground around you, but they cannot touch you. That is the metaphor for your life. Disrespect will come. Insults will fly. But if you keep walking without flinching, without recoil, without handing them a reaction, you become untouchable. This is the part most men struggle with, the pause. They hear the insult, they feel the burn, and their instinct is to fire back immediately. But mastery begins in that split second, when you breathe deeply instead of exploding. When you choose composure instead of chaos. When you respond with nothing but steady calm. That pause is your power, because the moment you pause, you prove to yourself that you, not her, are in control. Detach your feelings from your reactions. Understand that pain inside you doesn't have to become chaos outside you. You can feel the emotion, but hold the line. You can absorb the sting, but remain unshaken. That's what separates the weak from the strong. Weak men react. Strong men choose. So what does this look like in practice? It means training yourself to slow everything down. Someone disrespects you. You pause. You take a breath. You don't let words fall out of impulse. You ask yourself, what outcome do I want here? And suddenly, you realize that your reaction is not about the moment. It's about the bigger picture. Do you want to hand her proof that she still owns your emotions? Or do you want to show that nothing she does can move you? When you master this, you carry an aura that drives manipulators insane. Because people who thrive on chaos need your reaction like oxygen. They need to see you break, because your reaction feeds their power. But when you stay calm, when you give them nothing, they suffocate. They realize they no longer have access to the switch that once controlled you. And here's the irony. When a woman who disrespected you finally sees that she cannot provoke you, that her words slide off you like rain on steel, that her chaos meets only your stillness, regret begins to creep in. Because she no longer has influence. She no longer has control. She no longer leaves a mark, and that absence haunts her more than any angry outburst ever could. But this lesson transcends relationships. Once you learn to show zero emotional recoil, you use it everywhere. In business, when competitors try to rattle you with pressure, you stay calm. In family disputes, when old wounds are weaponized, you stay calm. In social dynamics, when manipulation hides behind emotional games, you stay calm. Because you know the truth, the less you react, the more control you possess. Nobody can play chess with a man who refuses to move his pieces out of impulse. Nobody can bait a man who won't bite the hook. Nobody can control a man whose inner state is his own fortress. That's the essence of being untouchable. Of course, this doesn't come easy. It requires discipline. It requires practice. It requires rewiring how you see the world. Instead of asking, "How do I feel right now?" you start asking, "What outcome do I want right now?" Instead of letting emotions dictate your moves, you let your mission decide. And with every repetition of this discipline, your strength compounds. You become the man who cannot be provoked, cannot be baited, cannot be dragged into chaos. And when you live this way, the impact is permanent. She realizes you didn't just walk away. You walked away without leaving her a single thread to pull on. No angry text, no bitter insult, no wounded expression for her to replay in her mind. Nothing. Just silence, composure, absence. And that emptiness is what haunts her, because there is nothing left for her to fight, nothing left for her to twist, nothing left for her to hold. That is the power of zero emotional recoil. It's not a trick. It's not a game. It's not about acting tough. It's about becoming the man who is so rooted in his own self-control, so anchored in his own values, that no disrespect has the power to shake him. This is the highest level of self-mastery. This is the point where you stop being a man who can be manipulated and start being a man who cannot be touched. A man who walks through storms like they are gentle breezes. A man who carries calm in chaos. A man who proves, through silence and composure, that real power doesn't scream. It doesn't even react. So let the insults come. Let the disrespect rise. Let the stones fly. You keep walking, unshaken, unbent, unmoved. Because in that calm, in that silence, in that refusal to recoil, you become untouchable. You've walked with me this far, through every silent move, every Stoic principle, every hard truth that men must embrace. And if there is one thing I want you to carve deep into your mind, it is this. The world doesn't respect what you say. It only respects what you tolerate. Not your promises, not your explanations, but the boundaries you enforce and the standards you refuse to let anyone cross. We've gone through the 5 unshakable moves together. You learn to cut off access. No warnings, no speeches, no theatrics, just absence. And in that silence, she finally feels the weight of your presence more than she ever did before. You learn to level up quietly, not drowning in bitterness, not stalking her life, but transforming yourself so completely that the man she once disrespected no longer exists. You learn to stop explaining, no longer handing away your power through cheap justifications, because your worth is never up for negotiation, and those who never respected you have no right to judge you. You learn to redirect your energy, not just leaving her, but leaving her entire world behind. You stepped out of mediocrity and into circles where discipline, ambition, and growth are the air you breathe. And finally, you learn to show zero emotional recoil. You don't explode. You don't hand her proof that she still controls you. You absorb the sting, but refuse to flinch. You walk through the storm like steel, silent, unbent, unbroken. These 5 moves aren't tricks. They're not games. They're not tools for manipulation. They are principles, Stoic principles. They are the path of a man who commands himself, and through that, commands his destiny. The path of a man who doesn't beg for respect, but lives in a way that commands it. And here's what you must never forget. This isn't about making her regret losing you. That regret is just the side effect. The real mission is to become the man who cannot be disrespected in the first place. The man who enforces his standards without words. The man who doesn't need permission to live his truth. The man who is free because his inner fortress cannot be touched. When you live this way, you don't just make one woman look back with regret. You make the entire world look at you with admiration. You become the man other men aspire to be. You become the man women cannot ignore. You become the man who moves through life, not with noise, but with presence. Not with demands, but with results. Not with rage, but with unshakable calm. The truth is simple. Respect never belongs to the loudest voice. It belongs to the man who never bends, and when you embody these 5 moves, you transform from a man chasing validation into a man who creates it everywhere he goes. So don't just hear this. Live it. Let it breathe through you. Cut off when boundaries are crossed. Build yourself into the man no one dares to underestimate again. Stop explaining. Step into circles that elevate you, and hold yourself so firmly that no insult, no disrespect, no storm can ever shake your foundation. That is how you become untouchable. That is how you rise. That is how you reclaim your power. And if this message hit home, I want you to declare it right now. Drop a comment, "I am untouchable," because every time you speak it, every time you affirm it, you carve it deeper into your identity. And if you're ready to continue this journey, the journey of discipline, strength, and unshakable presence, then subscribe to the Unshakable Stoic Path. This is the channel for men who choose to live by Stoic principles, not just to survive, but to rise, unyielding, unbreakable, unstoppable.